We're going to break it down one by one. And I hope you don't get bored. If you don't know the Constitution, you will after this. Article 1. All legislative powers have been vested in the Congress. It's pretty simple, cut and dry. Under Sharia law, the source of legal rulings for all acts of those who are morally responsible is Allah. That would be their God. It is not a sin to comply with man-made laws that require, for example, buying auto insurance or having photo ID, because, quote, the authorities are responsible for that sin, not the individual who is forced to comply. You'll see page numbers up there. There's a book out called Reliance of the Traveler. It is recommended by all Islamic scholars for Muslims living outside of that jurisprudence of Islamic law. In other words, if you live in America, you have to comply with these man-made laws. Well, according to the Quran, you're committing a sin because you're not supposed to do anything but what's in this book. So the way they get around that, for lack of a better term, is, well, you're not the one that's actually breaking the rules. You're not sinning because you didn't make that law. You're not the individual responsible for that sin. And if you have to live outside another country to adhere to their laws, then that's how you have to go about doing it. Do you follow me? The problem is now, throughout the United States, we have areas that are called Sharia no-go zones. Dearborn, Michigan is a perfect example.
That's right.
Dearbornistan, if you look on my website, I wrote an article called Welcome to Dearbornistan. The police officers that live out there that are not Muslim, and quite a few of them are, but the police officers that are not Muslim are afraid. This is not my opinion, this is what they've told me. They are afraid to go into these no-go zones. No-go zones have popped up in New York, Baltimore, Philadelphia, California, Florida, Texas. What they're doing is they're growing, and Tennessee, they're growing in size because the Hadith and the Quran explain to them about having to be forced to listen to other laws if you're in the minority. So if they have a large enough group in a small enough area, they create Sharia zones. And there are actually signs, which I probably should have put some pictures here, but there are signs in different areas throughout the United States where it actually says that it's a Sharia no-go zone. The power to declare war. Section 8. Powers of Congress include to levy taxes, to make laws, and to declare war. Now, under Sharia law, you have to obey the commands of the Caliph or his representative in everything that is lawful. If anyone's heard of the Caliphate, the Ottoman Empire, the Caliph is the leader. That would be the equivalent, I guess, of the president, if you will, or a prime minister. So you have to listen to the commands and interdictions of the Caliph or his representative in everything that is lawful, even if he is unjust, because the purpose of his authority is Islamic unity, which could not be realized if obeying him were not obligatory. The Caliph or his representative have the duty of undertaking jihad. I love how they always say jihad is an internal struggle, but in their own book they're referring it to here as war. The Caliph or his representative have the duty of undertaking jihad if their territory borders or enemy lands, of dividing the spoils of battle, remitting it for a fifth, etc., etc. Jihad, notice the last line there, jihad is an obligation for everyone when the enemy has surrounded the Muslims. Now think about that for a second. How about the Muslims that are living in this country? Are they not surrounded by many more that are not Muslim?
That's right.
Jihad is an obligation for all Muslims when they're surrounded. Now there's 5 different kinds of jihad. Not all of them are violent. There's jihad of the head, jihad of the heart, jihad of the mouth. Jihad of the hand is violent. All the others are jihad of the heart. That's when we see them get up and they read good passages from the Quran. We can live side by side. We appall what just happened in Boston. That's jihad of the heart and jihad of the mouth. Jihad of the head is where they utilize our Constitution against us. There are 5 different kinds of jihad. The last resort is violence, when all else fails. And that's what we're starting to see, unfortunately, like Boston. The President, Article 2, Section 1. Oh, should I really be reading the qualifications of the president given our current administration? He must be a natural-born citizen. We're not going to get into that. 35 years old, a resident for 14 years. He's elected by ballot by the people via the electors and shall serve, thank God, for no more than 2 4-year terms. No religious test shall ever be required as qualification. That's a shame. Sharia law. The caliph must be a Muslim. A non-slave, a male of the Quraysh tribe. The caliph appoints a group to select his successor. So basically the guy who's in charge will handpick a group of people when he starts to become ill or is going to step down. Usually they die in office. And those people will then pick the next one. So it's not by the people. There's no democracy or republic when it comes to Islam. However, the caliphate of someone who seizes power is considered valid, even though his act is disobedience in view of the danger from anarchy and strife that would otherwise ensue. Basically, if you overthrow the current caliphate, you can become the new caliph, which is why we see so much infighting in a lot of these Islamic countries. This is why we have one of the reasons we have disagreements between the Sunni and the Shia type Muslims, because they don't agree on that particular part. Removal of government officers in the United States Constitution. The President and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office if found guilty of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. Sharia law, you're in, you're in. Doesn't matter what you do, you're in for life. Legal authority. Article 6, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made under it, shall be the supreme law of the land, and judges in every state shall be bound by them. Funny, the last 3 we spoke about weren't.
That's right.
Senators and representative legislative officers, all executive and judicial officers, both in the United States and the several states, shall be bound by an oath or affirmation to support the Constitution. Sharia law, the source of legal rulings for all acts who are morally responsible, Allah, plain and simple. If it's not in here, it's not rules. It's not law.
Amen.
Civil and religious rights. Amendment 1. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or the press, or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for redress of grievances. We all know that one. Sharia law. Notice the first section. Non-Muslims are obliged to comply with Islamic rules. They always clarify everything. If you're living in an Islamic state, you're not a Muslim. You're a separate citizen, and we're going to talk about that. Non-Muslims are obliged to comply with Islamic rules that pertain to the safety and indemnity of life, reputation, and property. Non-Muslims are forbidden to openly display wine or pork, or recite their scriptures, or make a public display of feast days or funerals. Non-Muslims are forbidden to build new churches. Non-Muslims may not enter a mosque without permission. For the protection, for their own protection of non-Muslims is withdrawn if a non-Muslim commits adultery with a Muslim woman or marries her, leads a Muslim away from Islam, kills a Muslim, or says anything derogatory about Allah, the Prophet, or Islam. That would be the reason that I get so many death threats via email every day, which I ignore now because I can't keep track of them all. If you are living in, for example, Saudi Arabia, and there's a lot of Americans that work over there, especially in the oil fields and oil companies, you cannot even take a Bible into the country. They will stop you at the airport and they will confiscate your Bible, which, by the way, interestingly enough, what do they do with it? They burn it. The reason for that is because you're not allowed to lead a Muslim astray or away from Islam. They think their religion is so wonderful that they're afraid to have you discuss with them anything else. And you cannot even take a Bible into most of these countries. Good luck going to a country like that and try and find a church or a synagogue. Whatever ones had been there are raised up and they become mosques. That's part of their conquering things. That's why we have like Cordoba Mosque and things like that, which is a whole other presentation. And when they conquer an area, they turn any religious building that's not a mosque into a mosque. You are not allowed to build churches or synagogues. If you are what they refer to as a person of the book, meaning you believe in the Bible, there's only two people that fall into that category, Jews and Christians. You will be allowed to live so long as you pay a special tax to live there. And that tax, which is called the jizya tax, is actually for your own safety. You're paying for protection. That's what they were talking about, the protection that they give you. You have to pay for protection, but even during paying for that protection, once you start paying that jizya tax, you are still what is referred to as a dhimmi, which is a second-class citizen, which is lower than a woman, which is one half of a man. Women are not equal to men under Islamic law. And that's actually in the Quran and in their court systems. And we'll explain that. Amendment 2, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It is a condition that someone buying weapons be of a people who are not at war with Muslims. If you're at war with the Muslims, you can't buy a gun. Sorry. Selling weapons to non-Muslims who will use them against us. So they can't even sell a non-Muslim a weapon in these countries. U.S. Constitution Amendment 3, no soldier shall in time of peace be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in a time of war, but in a manner prescribed by law. It's not really covered under Sharia law. However, in something that was written back in 636, which was the Pact of Omar, which was imposed on the Christians in Syria, we shall keep our gates wide open for passers-by and travelers. We shall give board and lodging to all Muslims who pass our way for 3 days. Basically, during wartime, they open up their doors for Muslims and no one else. So do you start to see a little pattern here about how the Muslims are kind of siding only with the Muslims? This is that so-called religion of peace. Amendments 4 through 8. The amendments prohibit unreasonable searches, require due process according to the law, provide for confrontation of witnesses, impose jury trial on all matters involving over $20, and prohibit excessive fines and cruel and unusual punishments. Amendment 14 provides for equal protection of the laws for all citizens. Now this is a long one, under Sharia law. No testimony may be made by people who have lowly jobs, such as a street sweeper or bathhouse attendant or non-Muslims. So let's just read that from the beginning. Non-Muslim, you can't go to court. They're not going to believe you. You're not a Muslim. Testimony regarding fornication or sodomy requires 4 male eyewitnesses to the act. I want to explain that. Because a woman is only worth half of a man, which is what Allah told them. This is what Muhammad told them, their prophet. If a woman is raped in an Islamic country, and we have had cases as recently as this month throughout Iran and Saudi Arabia. A woman is raped, she goes to the police, she points out her attackers. If 4 men are not willing to go to court on her behalf and say, yes, I saw that happen, not only are they not punished, she's punished. And I'll explain why they do that. This is why you have so many women being stoned to death in Islamic countries. If she's married, she's admitting in court she committed adultery, even though they didn't really rape her. If she's not married, she had sex outside of marriage. Either way, she gets punished. This is why women are afraid in these countries, obviously so, to come forward when they're raped. What man in his right mind is going to get up there and side with her? She needs 4. This is all right out of the Quran and the Hadith. Next line. A woman's testimony is worth only half that of a man. In order, if there were 2 men that were in a dispute, and there was a female witness, they would not allow her to come forward in court. There would have to be 2 female witnesses, and that would only equal 1 male witness. Because according to the book, a woman is only worth half of a man. So if she's only worth half of a man, obviously her testimony is only worth half. You need 2 women to equal 1. Why we don't hear the women's rights organizations in this country screaming about Islam is beyond me. There is no provision for a jury trial under Sharia law. Cruel and unusual Islamic punishments include stoning for adultery, 40 lashes with hands, shoes, ends of clothes, or a whip for drunkenness, severing of the right hand for the theft over $36, and then the left foot for a repeat offense. In the beginning, you saw a slide when that music started to play of a bunch of hands laying on a table. Those were people that had committed shoplifting. So this religion of peace, if you live in one of these countries and you shoplift because you have been out of work for a year and you can't feed your family and they don't care if you stole a loaf of bread, your hand's coming off. And if you do it again, your foot's coming off. How nice of them to leave you one hand and one foot. Death for apostasy from Islam. You leave Islam and you get caught, you die. Plain and simple. Once you're in, you're in. And this is why there are now organizations popping up throughout the United States for Muslims that want to leave Islam, that are afraid to because their own families will kill them. This is why we have honor killings in this country. And I'm sure you've heard about the honor killings. Recently in Arizona, New York, Georgia, we've had honor killings popping up all over the place in this country. Oftentimes the media will shove it under what I like to call the proverbial prayer rug, and we won't hear about it because Allah forbid we say something negative about the victim, the Muslims. Somehow over the last 12 years since 9/11, they've become the victims.
Yeah.
Boy, I get the feeling I'm in a crowd of people that agree with me. This is too easy. I'm used to having people yell at me. Indemnity for accidental killing a male Muslim is 100 camels or 4,235 grams of gold. Current value about $144,000. For killing a woman is half that of a man. Because remember, a woman's only worth half of a man. Killing a Jew or a Christian is 1/3 that would be paid for a Muslim. So guess what, everybody? You're even lower than the women. And I don't even want to think about what the math is if you happen to be a female Christian, because then you're like way down there. It's even less than that, exactly. Causing a miscarriage is 1 slave. There's no indemnity for killing a non-Muslim, because we're at war with Muslims. So if a Muslim kills a non-Muslim, it's not going to be punished. I mean, that's the bottom line. Jews and Christians are subject to a poll tax not less than 1 dinar, current value $144, per adult male per year. No maximum has been stipulated. That's the jizya I was talking about. If you are a Jew or a Christian and you want to live in these countries, you have to pay this jizya tax. And I keep losing because I turn around my place.
Yeah, excuse me, you skipped over to under the 144,000, 2 lines down. What is that?
Pastor, do you want to tell us what a Zoroastrian is?
1/15 that of a Muslim.
1/15. What is
It's
that?
a religion. It is a religion.
It is a religion, but I'm not familiar with it, to be honest.
Okay.
I know it's a religion, but I know when it comes to, they've got to believe in either some sort of Judaism or Christianity, or they would not be allowed to live. Buddhists, for example, Sikhs, things of that sort, they are given a choice in these countries. Convert to Islam or die. You're not a people of the book. You have a choice. You can convert to Islam and accept Allah, or you die. So the only saving grace that we have as Jews or Christians is that we are so-called people of the book. No maximum stipulation. There is a penalty for remaining in their ancestral religion instead of embracing the religion of truth. So that's the jizya tax. That's the penalty. If you want to believe in your religion rather than what they refer to as the religion of truth, which is Islam, there's a penalty. A husband may beat a rebellious wife for, number 1, not allowing immediate sexual intercourse when he asks for it. If she can physically endure it. How kind of him. Answering him coldly. Being adverse when she was previously kind. The only limitation is that he may not break her bones, wound her, or cause bleeding. How do you beat someone without wounding them? That's what I want to know. There is actually more than one, many, dozens of YouTube videos. You can go on YouTube and find them, with these Islamic scholars and imams from Saudi Arabia and Iran who will show you on YouTube with a stick where and how to beat your woman so you don't break those rules, or in essence break her bones. But this is the year 2013 and they're a peaceful religion. They don't do that anymore. Slavery and involuntary servitude are abolished. The section on slavery is not translated into English. It remains in Arabic. The editors of The Reliance of the Traveler, the book that I spoke about, claims that these provisions are no longer acceptable, yet they remain in the text of Sharia law. Elsewhere, the manual states, originally the status of a slave was simply the outcome of having been taken as a prisoner of war. A captive who could not buy his freedom by means of ransom remained in the possession of the captor until he had earned his freedom by work or until he was granted liberty by his master. This is what we see with the Somali pirates taking people for ransom. Oftentimes they will use them as slaves, especially if they're not paid a ransom for these individuals. Sex slaving is huge within the Islamic religion.
We can go back to that other point that we were just talking about a while ago. That is the ancient Persian religion, which is based out of Iran.
Yes, they were Persians.
That's right.
You're right. You are absolutely right. I knew that and I wanted to see who would get it right.
Well, I looked it up too. 'Cause
You're looking it up though. I see you on your phone over there. Amendment 21 repealed prohibition, thereby allowing the manufacture, sale, and transportation of alcoholic beverages. Under Sharia law, it is unlawful to sell grapes to someone who's going to make wine from it. Quote, Allah cursed, whoever drinks wine, gives it to others to drink, sells it, buys it, presses it for another, transports it, receives it, or eats its price. The sins include drinking wine in any form or other intoxicant, even if only a drop as in medicine, pressing out the juice to make wine or other intoxicant, carrying it for purposes of drinking or having it carried, serving it to others or having it served, selling it, buying it, having bought it or sold, consuming proceeds from selling it, or keeping the wine or other intoxicants. Can anybody here tell me what the 9/11 hijackers were doing prior, weeks leading up to getting on those planes and crashing them into the towers? Go ahead.
Party.
They were partying. Why could they do that if they're not allowed to drink alcohol? There's a reason for it. It's called taqiyya. Taqiyya is an Arabic word. It's mentioned in the Quran. As a matter of fact, it's encouraged. Taqiyya allows you to lie without sinning. Now here's the way taqiyya works. You're allowed to lie provided you are either protecting yourself or furthering Islam. And I know this sounds hard to swallow because the next question I usually get is, well, how do you know that they're being honest? You don't. And I know that sounds crazy. Pick up one of these. This is Quran, by the way. And I tell people, don't burn it, read it. You burn it after you read it, but make sure you read it first. You are encouraged, you are allowed to perform taqiyya, lying, provided you are protecting yourself. Like if you are surrounded by a bunch of men with knives and guns who say we're going to kill all Muslims. I'm not a Muslim. That's okay. But what's worse is act like somebody who's not a Muslim to further Islam. We're on a mission. We're going to perform a terror attack in the United States. We don't want to get caught. Oh, we'll be out there partying. We're going to go to the strip joints. We're going to drink alcohol. That's all taqiyya. They were allowed.
How do you spell that, taqiyya?
Taqiyya is, there's a lot of different ways when you translate it. If we don't speak up, that's what we're going to start seeing here. I had other slides in there that I removed because I wanted to keep it short and have you guys be able to answer questions. The bottom line is we are seeing more and more in the United States instances of creeping Sharia. And what they are doing now in using their Sharia of the mouth, Sharia of the head, Sharia of the heart example, a girl got hired by Abercrombie & Fitch recently. And I don't remember what state it was in, but they're a national chain of a clothing store. They have a dress code, like most clothing stores that are retail shops. She went in for the interview, she got the job, she knew about the dress code, she showed up for work the first day, she had a headscarf on. She said, well, I'm a Muslim. This is my religion. You can't make me not wear it. Well, we have a dress code, number one. You didn't wear it when you came to the interview, number two, because we would have said something, and we don't care. She sued them. She won. Because groups like the ACLU say, you can't step on somebody's religion. Oh, yes, they do. Target, national chain, had an incident, I do not remember what state it was in, where a young lady was hired as a cashier. Worked there for a couple of weeks, went to her managers, and eventually went to the corporate office, and eventually she was fired and she sued. She refused as a cashier to touch pork. So if you were bringing in your shopping cart a pepperoni pizza, she wouldn't touch it. She sued them, she won. If you go to that Target store and there is a Muslim cashier, you have two choices. You can either, when she asks you, scan that item yourself, or you have to wait until she calls another cashier over to touch it for her. Last year in New York at an amusement park, there was a big riot. You may or may not have heard about this. I think it was called Playland, where there was a group of Muslims who wanted to get on the roller coaster, but they refused to take off their headscarves. They tried to explain to them. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this out. Headscarf blowing in the wind. You're on tracks, wheels, things, you're moving fast. It's not safe. You have to remove your head covering to go on the ride. A riot ensued that was so large that they had to call neighboring county police officers. Many police officers were injured. This is what we're seeing day after day in this country, where they are starting to push Islam and we have to accept it, but yet Christianity or Judaism is being pushed aside.
Right.
So the war on religion is there, but it's a little bit hypocritical.
Yes.
I'm Jewish. I grew up in Israel. Not only do I not have a problem with a nativity scene, if you say Merry Christmas to me, I'm going to wish you a Merry Christmas. I happen to like Christmas. I think it's a great time of year. What is the big deal? It doesn't offend me if you don't know I'm Jewish. And if you say Happy Hanukkah, I'll still say Merry Christmas. They are pushing their religion and shoving it down our throats.
That's right.
Shelby, Tennessee,
Yeah.
Tyson Foods.
That's right.
They took out, it's a union. They make chicken. They took out of the union contract Labor Day as a holiday and substituted it for a Muslim holiday.
Last day of Ramadan.
Iftar. Are we not in the United States anymore?
Exactly.
Then they built in the established poultry plant a separate room so the Muslims that worked there could pray 5 times a day and not have to leave work. If you want to pray at work, great. More power to you. God bless you. You can do it right where you're standing. You can do it in a corner. You don't need a special room. This
That's
is where we're
right. That's right.
accommodating them.
That's right.
That's exactly
Throw out
right.
your stupid carpet, pardon me. Throw out your carpet, get on your hands and knees, and pray towards Mecca. I don't care. But it shouldn't come from my tax dollars.
That's
It
right.
shouldn't
That's
come
right.
from my buying Tyson chicken, and you shouldn't be given preferential treatment over the other individuals that work there. When Christmas time rolls around, the employees are going to be told, you can't say Merry Christmas. You say Happy Holidays. Don't say Merry Christmas. But our Muslim friends, they can pray 5 times a day, and we're going to start changing the holidays. This is what we're seeing going on. There was found, not long after 9/11, a copy in Sweden, in a safe house, a Muslim safe house, of the Muslim Brotherhood, something called the 100-Year Plan. I think, this time I actually remembered it. The 100-Year Plan was a step-by-step procedure by the Muslims as to how they're going to take over the world. That's Arabic. But in English here, I've got one very important page. And this is stamped as Government Exhibit 003-0085, U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation, the largest terrorist organization trial in the United States. The Holy Land Foundation Turned out to be all that money was going to Hamas, the terrorist organization. They brought this up in trial. This is the translation of the last page. The last page lists 29 different Islamic organizations that are here in America that they say they are going to use to achieve this 100-year plan of making Islam the only accepted religion on earth. Number one is the Islamic Society of North America. If you haven't heard of them, ISNA, you should have. The Islamic Society of North America. Number two, the Muslim Student Association. You can find the MSA, the Muslim Student Association, on every campus of every university throughout the United States. Here's the problem with the Muslim Student Associations, and I want to put in perspective to you how big this organization is. These are all Muslim Brotherhood entities. They are all related in one way or another to the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Student Organization the Muslim Student Association has more chapters across universities in the United States than the Republican and Democrat parties combined. Think about that. Think about that for a minute. They haven't been here since the beginning, since 1776, regardless of what Obama might tell you.
Please.
Okay? They have more chapters than the Republican, you have the young Republicans and the young Democrats on universities. The MSA has more chapters than they do. This is a list. It goes down, and I'm not going to read them all, but everyone's heard of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations? CAIR is like the ACLU of Islam. They're lawyers. If it's one thing these people are not, it's dumb. They're not stupid, and don't ever underestimate them. We can make fun of them about being camel jockeys, but in reality, the ones they have running these organizations are brilliant. And they know exactly what they're doing. They have a 100-year plan, and they are following that plan to the letter, where all of those organizations have separate things that they are meant to do, that it all brings it all together. And we have nothing in place to combat it. And that's why we see over in Europe, especially in England and France, the problem with Sharia courts. In October of 2008, they screamed and yelled, the Muslims screamed and yelled to the British, to the UK government, that they wanted just one Sharia court. That's all we wanted, one. There's over 100 now. And that is why you have Merkel, the former Chancellor of Germany, Sarkozy, the Prime Minister of France, former Prime Minister, and Cameron, former Prime Minister of England, and the Prime Minister of Australia, all within a month of each other said multiculturalism has utterly failed. Because they realized it. And what do we do here in America? We sing songs and kumbaya and hold hands and say, no, if we treat them right, they'll like us. No, they won't.
That's right.
Pick up their book. Read what the facts are. Because this is not Gotti's opinion. This is what they are told to do. And one thing I want to leave you with before I take questions. I got a lot of slack for this, but it's the truth. The people that flew the planes into the World Trade Center on 9/11, flew a plane into the Pentagon on 9/11, and crashed another plane into the field at Schwenksville, Pennsylvania on 9/11, were being good Muslims.
Right.
They were doing what they were told to do. In their mind, it is no different than when you pick up the Holy Bible and do what Jesus would do. Everybody catch that? That was a Jew saying that.
I did.
The point that I'm making is, we can't look at them as being insane. We can't look at them as being crazy. They are doing what they are taught to do from the time they can't even speak. This is all they know. And that's why I say my problem is not with the Muslim individual. They can be taken out of Islam. Islam is the problem. They're human beings. They just don't have our morals and ethics because this doesn't have our morals and ethics. Anybody want to take a wild guess how many times the word love is in this book?
0.
No, it's in here. Once. One time the word love is mentioned in the Quran. Are you ready for this? Everybody sitting down? The context of the word love being mentioned is Allah will love those that fight in His name. That's it. So even the time they mention love, it has to do with war. Now I do want to leave you on one note, even though I just said I was going to leave you on a different note. This is important. 80% of the people in the United States that speak Arabic are not Muslims. I don't want you guys to think that every time you hear Arabic, if you recognize it as Arabic, that you're dealing with someone who is a Muslim. 80% of those Arab-speaking people in the United States are not of the Muslim religion. They came here from other countries because Muslims took over their country, and that's their language now. Because the first thing that the Muslims do when they conquer an area is they strip away their culture of the people they're conquering. And the easiest way to do that is change their language. And that's why you have people like Brigitte Gabriel, a Christian from Lebanon, who speaks Arabic. Most people in this country that are Arabic speaking are not Muslim. They came here to get away from it. So again, I'm ending it on that so there's no, please understand, I do not advocate violence in any way, shape, or form. They bring enough of that on themselves. We don't need to help that along.